Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Practical Liberty. My name's Henry Bingaman. I was at Tom Wood's event last weekend, and a lot of people came up to me saying they were interested in starting copywriting, but they'd been in their career for 15, 20 years and just didn't think they could change directions. Well, today's guest proves that that's a load of BS. He was a farm boy, grew up in a town of less than 1,000 people, had never traveled outside 100 miles until he became a trucker, which he did for 27 years, almost 30 years. And now, due to some other circumstances in the middle of his life, he's starting an entire new business and going out, starting a podcast, becoming an entrepreneur. And he's also my second Canadian guest. So, Bentley Hamm, thank you so much for joining me.
Great. Thanks for having me, Henry. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I want to give people a taste of your story because you're up in Alberta, Canada, which is, I think they call it the Texas of Canada, which makes it sound appealing to me. But it's the rough and tumble area. So, what was your life like growing up, and how did you kind of go from farm boy to trucker who's now been to every state and every territory in North America?
Uh, well, yeah, that's exactly it. I grew up on a farm, small town, middle of nowhere. How did I do it? Well, I was like 16 years old the first time we went away on a real family vacation. And we stopped for something to eat at a truck stop. And so here I am, this kid who's never really been anywhere, done a whole lot, seen a whole lot. And sitting at the table behind me was a group of truck drivers telling trucker stories, all the places they've been, all the things that they've seen, and I did this, and oh, I saw this, and this one time here, and the light bulb went off. I've never been anywhere, and these guys have been everywhere. I want to do that. I have to do that. So as soon as I was able to leave home and go get a license to drive truck, that's exactly what I did. And yeah, basically 30 years in.
How old were you when you first got your CDL?
In Canada, we can do it at 18, but we can't cross the border into the US until we're 21 because that's the minimum legal driving down there. They're trying to bring in, or they are bringing in, some training for underage. I don't know exactly what the rules are. I don't follow them that closely anymore since I'm not doing it. And I'm long past that phase. But yeah, so I got my license. I literally wrote my learner's license on my 18th birthday. And less than a week later, I had a job driving a truck and I was gone.
So you worked for another trucking company for a couple of years?
Yeah, for the first just about 4 years of my career, I worked for a trucking company hauling grain and fertilizer around Western Canada. Like you said, I grew up in Saskatchewan, which is the next province over from Alberta. I now live in Alberta. I'm cursed with having to look at the beautiful Rocky Mountains every day. I can see them from my front yard, so that's pretty awesome. And it is beautiful. Like if you Google Banff or Lake Louise and look at the images, that's an hour and a half, 2 hours away from me. I go there all the time. But it was just a matter of getting out and seeing something. And even doing that, hauling grain and fertilizer, I never really went anywhere far outside of essentially our prairie provinces. And then decided it was time to be a big boy and bought my first truck and got a real job, so to speak, running long haul. And third trip in, I was sent to Toronto. So a kid who had never been or who grew up in a town of 1,000 people, never been in a really that big of a city. Edmonton and Calgary aren't that big. To going to a city of multi-millions, it was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And so when you buy your own truck, are you still working for other people, or are you technically an entrepreneur at that point? Like you have your own kind of company at that point?
Yeah, it's my own company. So in the trucking industry, it's called an owner operator. So I owned the truck. I was responsible for fuel, maintenance, truck payments, all of the above, paying myself the whole 9 yards. And but I worked for a carrier. So they provided loads. At that point in time, I was still using their trailers. I also pulled their trailers at that time. Eventually, I moved on where I had all of my own equipment and stuff like that. Had uh, got into flat decks and heavy equipment because I grew up on a farm, worked with equipment all my life. To me, it was no big deal. And then when I started hauling flat decks and oversized loads, and I got asked, well, are you comfortable hauling this load? This is fairly big. I kind of laughed because it was only about 10 feet wide. And I was like, on the farm, we bought a curling rink from a town 80 miles away and moved it to the farm, which became our pig barn. It was about 30 feet wide. That was my first oversized load. So 10 feet wide was pretty simple.
That's kind of funny. So what, I think a lot of people have this stereotype of truckers as like, oh, they couldn't get a job doing, a real white collar job. At least I grew up on the East Coast with a bunch of city people who have all these stereotypes about anybody that's not from a big city. But every trucker I've talked to, a lot of them, they sit there and listen to audiobooks and podcasts, and they're so much more well informed than a lot of these people that spend their entire day in the office. So because you were a part of the trucking culture for 27 years, what was that culture like? The travel sounds exciting to some people. It sounds tedious to others. What was your experience of the whole trucker experience?
The best way to describe the job is hours of, especially if you're running long haul over the road, it's hours of endless boredom interrupted by moments of sheer terror, because people don't pay attention. And more and more as time has gone on, because of cell phones and stuff like that, the distractions has changed dramatically. So, and there is a lot of that. I understand the general conception or misconception of truck drivers as being, let's face it, I know exactly what people think of us. We're just a bunch of idiots. We can't do anything else. Why do they put seatbelts in trucks? It's to keep the guys from licking the windows. I've heard all of the jokes, right? And there is certainly a segment of that, because it is a low skilled job from the outside looking in. It doesn't take a whole lot of skill to sit there and hold the steering wheel. However, for most people, when they think about that, well, I drive to work all day long. I do that every day. I could do your job. Okay. Take your steering wheel, grab yourself a lawn chair, and go sit it down in front of your house. Now go drive across the country with your house. And go drive in places you've never been before. You don't know your way around, and you have to navigate this all with directions from a customer, GPS, whatever the case may be. And do not blindly follow your GPS, because they make mistakes. All of a sudden, it's not quite so easy, is it? There's a lot more involved. And then you take into account the specialized field that I ended up moving into. I hauled heavy equipment, oil field equipment, compressors. The stuff I've moved, not me in particularly being featured, but I'm in the background on a lot of, I've lost count of how many episodes of Discovery Channel. I'm on Ice Road Truckers. I'm on License to Drill, Highway Through Hell, Highway to Hell. Oh God, there's some other ones. I don't even remember. Like I said, I'm never a featured person. I'm not somebody who sought out the limelight, but if you know where to look in the background, you can see my truck, and occasionally you can see me and doing things in the background and whatnot. So the things that I moved were big enough that they paid attention, right? Like I hauled mining equipment. I hauled buckets for machines that the bucket itself weighed 132,000 pounds without teeth, without the back wall, nothing attached to it, just the bucket. And it would scoop 100 tons of dirt in one scoop. This bucket attached to a machine that weighed 2.2 million pounds.
Wow.
That's the stuff I played with. The biggest trucks in the world, I've hauled them.
I mean, how do you even move some of that stuff? It sounds logistically impossible.
I'm like IKEA. Everything that I haul is some assembly required. Nothing is shipped in one piece. It's way too big. It's all broken down into parts and pieces. Most of the stuff that I hauled, 95% of people could never recognize it and know what it is, because it is so broke down into such a small component to be shipped that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's man. It's funny how often I drive past trucks that you don't even think about what's on the back. You don't think about what that could possibly be, but it needs to get somewhere.
Yeah, I've got asked that a lot. What is that? Every now and then you hold something that was very obvious. The big mining graders, 24M graders. It's a grader. There's no wheels on it. There's no blade on it. But it is this great, big, massive grader that makes everything else you see on the road like a Tonka toy, if that. It's so big. Yeah. And they're like, what is that? They're like, where's it going? Well, it's for a mine. They have a blade on them that's wider than most roads.
And you have to drive those through some back roads, or do you get them all through highways?
Oh no, that's all back roads. They're too high to go down the highway. They're higher than most overpasses.
Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of complications involved in trucking that people don't really think about. So
absolutely.
You're up in Canada, down in the United States. I have a very libertarian audience. We look at this like, the US is becoming oppressive, and then we look north and we're like, oh, it's the Soviets. What has your experience, because, you've been an entrepreneur technically you were an entrepreneur and you're going leaning harder into that, which we'll get to soon. But what was your experience of just navigating that climate, that Canadian climate? That is it as bad as we, us libertarians in the US kind of look up and see, or is there more flexibility than we imagine?
It is bad. I guess I have a unique viewpoint. For the last 27 years, I've spent more time in the US than I have in Canada. So like most of my career was bringing equipment to or from the US. And 90% of Canada's population and industry exists in the bottom 300 miles of the country.
Right.
Well, it's several thousand miles across the US. So when you go haul a machine out of Texas to Canada, you've got 1 day of driving in Canada and 5 days in the US. So naturally, the time shift, I spend a lot of time down there. You guys definitely have a different viewpoint than a lot of people. Like you said, I'm in Alberta. It is very much the Texas of Canada. Everybody thinks that people out here are extremely conservative. We're not. We're actually probably a lot more libertarian. I know people paint me with that brush of being very conservative or ultra conservative. I'm very much libertarian. I don't care what you want to do, how you want to do it. Feel free to do it. I live your life how you want to live it. It comes at a very, very high price, though. I expect the same respect back. Allow me to live my life the way that I choose to live it. Don't tell me how to do it. Don't tell me what to do, which with our current government, I hate talking politics, but with our current government, they are very much a do as we tell you to do. And naturally, out here, we resist that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truckers, especially that, the trucker movement, the trucker convoy in Canada got a lot of attention all across the world. And, the government came down very heavy on it. But you were a trucker for the beginning of the. So what was that like up in Canada?
Never mind Canada, all of North America. But particularly in Canada, it sucked. It was very difficult because there were bureaucrats and people making rules that don't necessarily understand the industry. So, when all restaurants were ordered closed and stuff like that, we didn't know where we could eat. Imagine being 1,000 miles away from home in a strange city. Restaurants are all closed down. Well, find yourself a gas station, eat Roller Grill hot dogs, sandwiches out of the cooler. I mean, life was difficult. Various jurisdictions during all of that, I had to move a very large compressor across Ontario out there. I had a support staff. I had multiple pilot cars. I had police escort for part of the way. It took 10 days to go across Ontario. And just as I got to Ontario, in the government's infinite wisdom, they looked at it and went, showers in a truck stop. Well, that's like a public shower, like a gym. No, those are all ordered closed. So for 10 days, I was unable to have a shower.
Oh my goodness. That's
and
ridiculous.
hotels for my support staff were difficult to get because most hotel staff didn't show up, and they certainly didn't want to clean rooms because it was all the fear factor and whatnot. So there were some nights that my support vehicles, pilot cars, had to sleep in their vehicles, and nobody got showers and nobody got services. It was difficult. Like you then in the US, depending on the state, you'd go through a town and everything is open. Oh, cool. We've got another hour and a half of daylight. There's another town an hour down the road. We're good to go. So because we're limited by daylight and hours of travel, you get to that town and they've rolled up the sidewalks and locked all the doors, and you can't eat, you can't get anything, and now you're hungry. And you're there for the night because moving the stuff I moved, you can't drive in the dark. So now you're there for the night. There's nothing to eat. Nothing is open. Have fun.
Man, it's so funny. I keep hearing more and more of these consequences of the lockdowns that you'd never think of. Like, I've heard of people in Africa that are having to sell their children because they can't feed them because the rest of the world is shut down. It's gotten, and that's a little extreme, but they thought they could shut down the world with no consequences and take care of all of it. But there's so much, economies are so dynamic that you can't predict all these factors. Nobody can think through, which is why, freedom is usually the best option, is let people figure it out. And we usually do. And, think about the sanitary effects of lack of sanitation has to be as bad as for younger, healthy people. If you're not allowed to shower, you can't find good food. What are the health consequences of that compared to a virus that has a % survival rate? It's just it's so absurd. I'm going to have to cut this part out of YouTube because they're not going to like it. But
And that's exactly right. It is the consequences of shutting down an economy. I'm not an economist, but as somebody who is an intricate piece of moving things around from place to place, like, what do you know? You're just a dumb truck driver. Well, but I'm the guy who brings the thing you need to run your business that you've purchased from a retailer here, that is bought from a manufacturer over there, that people supply parts to this manufacturer to put the thing together. I see all of this because I was a piece of that interconnected web that nobody pays attention to, that nobody thinks about unless you're in that specific industry. So, when they started talking about locking everything down, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be bad, very bad. Generally speaking, I live in Canada. It's January. It's kind of what we call cold. Snow, ice. Not a whole lot of vegetables being grown this time of the year. They all come from California, Florida.
Right.
Shut down the food supply. Well, vegetables and all of this stuff, they have a shelf life, right? Sure. Stop all that transportation or availability coming, and it doesn't take very long, and it's interrupted. We run out. Like, most people don't understand that the general grocery supply warehouse is a 3-day lifespan. That's it. Because by the time that they repackage it, send it out to the grocery stores to get put on the shelf and done there, it has a shelf life. This all has to be done inside of the produce's shelf life. So most warehouses have literally 3 days or less supply on hand. Because if they had more, it would go bad by the time they got it out, and they'd be throwing product away that they've paid for, throwing money away. They don't do that. That's just dumb business. So you shut something down, all across, the ripple effects are endless. And being in that industry and knowing it, it was like, this is going to be very bad. It has the potential to be horrific. And it was. And we're still feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, part of the inflation is the logistics problems that they created. I can talk about the monetary effects from an Austrian perspective, but some of it is just like, you screwed up the whole supply chain. We had efficient routes. We had people like you that knew the logistics and knew how to get places. And then we screwed it all up, not knowing the consequences. And it's just rippling, and I don't know when it stops.
Nor do I. I have no idea.
But so how much of your job was actually planning that logistics versus just taking a route or taking an order?
Oh, there was a ton of planning of the stuff I did, because you couldn't just, I'm loading in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm going to Calgary, Alberta, while you run straight down the road. That sounds easy when you're hauling your atypical, what we call legal freight, because it fits down the road. The roads are built for that. Take, for instance, loading a D11 dozer in Peoria, Illinois. I can't even just pull out of the factory and straight onto the interstate, because I don't fit underneath the overpass between the factory and the interstate. And then various overpasses along the route, I don't fit under. So I have to go around them, which is generally the back roads. And you have to plan all these routes, travel restrictions, weekends. There's a lot involved. And other things you'll take into account: time of the year. Well, if I go this way at this time of the year, I'm highly likelihood I'm going to get caught by weather. Right. It's going to maybe delay me to the point that I'm late. So I'm better to go this way. All of this planning comes into play that people don't think about.
Yeah. I mean, if you're hauling something across the country, you could get hit in a snowstorm in like the mountains in Colorado and then get hit by a hurricane in Florida. Like, there's a lot you have to really consider. And it's funny. I've never thought that much about trucking, but it's more complicated than most people would imagine.
Year round, I carried sandals and shorts and nice breathable shirts, because it would be 80 degrees in Texas when I'm loading down there, and 6 days later I'm at 40 below in Canada.
Yeah.
And 4 days later I'm back. So you want to talk about a climate shift with yourself. It's very, very difficult to get acclimatized, because you're moving back and forth all the time like that when you're traveling all over the place.
So let's talk about the shift to your newer entrepreneurial journey. I don't know if you want to go into it, but do you want to talk about what made you leave trucking?
So I during COVID, actually had an interview somewhat like this. I delivered a load up into Alaska and was asked to do an interview on a radio show. and we were talking about it. And the guy used to drive trucks. So we got talking about the places that you've been and what you've done. And I kind of realized after that interview that, boy, there's not a lot left to be accomplished. I've been in every province, every state, every territory, and not just been there, but on all the difficult roads. I've been on the Dempster Highway, the Dalton Highway. I've been on the Tibbet-Whiteout ice roads. I've been the Bay Como Labrador City Expressway, like all of these places, like the hard ones. And I realized that there's not a lot of difficult stuff left to do. I've done all of that. I was thinking about a career change and was looking at several different things. And then about 6 months later, I've got a health condition that isn't completely diagnosed, but when I have the attacks, the pain is so intense and so horrible. The only thing we can do to manage it is a concoction of morphine and Toradol, which are Schedule 1 controlled substances. So if I'm on the road and have an attack and have to take the pain meds, I can't drive for 30 days. That's the half-life. That's what's required by law. So I can't really do my job when I could literally be parked for 30 days. That nobody would accept having their shipment be parked for that long. And moving the stuff that I do, because it is so big, requires so much involvement, I can't just hire another driver to do what I do. It's very specialized. I was very good at what I did. So it's just not worth it. So I came home and started working on the thing I was looking at, which was building websites, and kind of enjoyed that, being able to manipulate things on the computer and make something happen. And through this, I was trying to figure out why some would get a lot of traffic and some wouldn't. And I discovered this little avenue called SEO, search engine optimization. And there are things that you can do that work with the Google algorithms or things that work against it. And I enjoyed the technical aspects and the analyzing, which was probably why I was so specialized in trucking. The regular freight was boring to me. Figuring out how to take something apart that is too big to be moved down the road and actually move it and then put it back together on the other end, all of that stuff just triggers the stuff in my brain. So I've taken a massively deep dive down that hole, thoroughly enjoy it. And I've hired a consultant to help get me up to speed that runs a multi-million-dollar agency. And he just laughs at where I'm at and how enthusiastic I am about it. And he says he's going to have me leveled up to be in the top 20% in no time. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and moving that direction.
Hey guys, sorry to cut into this. I'll be back to the episode in just a second, but how free do you feel right now? If you want to figure out exactly what level of freedom you're at right now and learn how to create more freedom in your life, I've created a short tactical checklist that'll kind of give you the steps to take to figure out where you are and how to get to the next level of freedom. Just go to henrybing.co/liberty and you can download that free checklist. That's henrybing.co/liberty. All right, back to the show. So your current website is Summit Web Creations, and it's web design, but your focus is SEO. That's what really gets you excited when you get to work.
Absolutely. Yes. I can build a website and I will build you a website, but if you already have an existing one, but it's not getting any traffic or ranking, I don't have to build you a website. I can take your existing one and I can manipulate things to make them work better. And I've got a couple of guys who are working with me that are subcontracted like I was to other people in the past. So if there's stuff that I can't do, I've got people who can do it for me. Or maybe can do it better than I can. But the analyzing, the breaking down, and getting you ranked, that is definitely my preference. That's what I will focus on. But I have a full suite of services, and we can take care of all of that. And like you said in the beginning, people who've I've been doing my job for 20 years, 25 years. I can't imagine doing something different. I'm 50 years old, and I'm starting something new. The last time I really got into and played hard with the computer, I was in high school. Needless to say, everything that I knew is nothing compared to what it is today. I had to completely learn it all over again. You just have to want to. You have to find something that you really want to do. And if you want to do it, you'll find the fire and the desire inside of you to go and do it.
Yeah. I mean, it does help in some ways where it's, when I started copywriting, I kind of burned my bridges behind me. I was like, I'm going all in. I'm too embarrassed to go back and get another corporate job. Like, it was miserable there anyway. And you had the same, like, you're like, well, the trucking thing is kind of out of my control now, so I have to do it. What would you say to somebody who's they're comfortable where they are financially, but they're miserable doing it? And they're looking at this other stuff and saying, well, I don't have the skills to do that. what kind of advice do you have for people that are, I guess it's a lack of faith in themselves, or I don't know, what is it? What would you say to somebody like that?
Largely, I think it's twofold. I think it's a lack of belief in yourself, and that comes from being comfortable, which is nice to be, and it's easy to become comfortable. It's difficult to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Get comfortable with it, because if you want to go out on your own and own a business, you're going to be in uncomfortable situations almost daily. So you have to learn to embrace it, because uncomfortability comes with it. Dealing with employees, dealing with clients, it's dealing with the government. Like when you go into business, congratulations, you've just become a tax agent for the government. That
Right.
is part of owning a business. Is you are now a tax agent. It's something I never even really realized before. So there's going to be uncomfortable situations. So get used to that. But the other thing is, because people generally speaking have a job and they have a lifestyle and they spend up to that limit, most people are spending more money than they actually have to. So
By
if
a
you
lot.
want to buy a lot, so if you want to go out on your own, you have to cut some things out. And I did. I cut a lot of things out. It cost me less than 25% to live now compared to what it used to when I was very good and successful at trucking. So because of that, I don't need to make as much money, which gives me the opportunity to extend this runway to build this with the savings that I've got and go and do it. But then knowing that those savings are coming down will give you that motivator to get good at it and to literally get off your ass and go and do something. You know, at the end of the day, a kick in the ass results in a step forward. And sometimes we all need a kick in the ass. And burning your bridge or deciding you're going to do this and cutting your costs and your lifestyle down to go and do it might be the kick in the ass you need and get you moving. And realize that I can live like this, but boy, I don't like it, which means I need to get going to be able to make the money to live like I want to. The
Right.
cool part is, once you get yourself back up to that speed where you can make that money and live like you want to, you know that you can always go back and you can really rack up those savings and put money away. That is where the true success comes in.
Yeah, there's a Dave Ramsey saying, which I forget what it is exactly, but it's like, live like nobody else wants to today so you can live like nobody else can tomorrow, or something like that.
Yeah.
There's so much upside in being an entrepreneur and building these businesses. And when you get into the online space, especially like with SEO, you have unlimited upside and there's very little expenses. Like you don't have to maintain a truck, right? I'm sure that was an enormous expense. You don't have, there's so little, overhead costs in these online businesses that it's all upside, but it takes so much dedication and skill. Like people look at the internet marketing guys and the guys driving Lambos and say, well, all they do is go online. I'll do that. And then they get 6 months into it and like, oh, this is hard. I have to work hard at this. It's the opposite of the corporate, ladder. You're expected. I don't know if it's the opposite of the corporate ladder. Maybe that's wrong, but it's just such a different experience being an entrepreneur where you are your income, like your skills are your income, and it's your hustle that makes all the difference. And it's so rewarding when you get there, but it's so hard to get to that freedom point where it's like, okay, now I'm comfortable again. And then you have to make yourself uncomfortable to get to the next level. It's just a never ending cycle, but it's so rewarding. I'm always encouraging people to make that jump.
Oh yeah. The rewards are, the ultimate reward is, and especially if you're entrepreneurial or you're libertarian leaning and that sort of thing, the ultimate reward is freedom. Because when you get yourself to that point that you are running your business and you are generating the income you want, or more income than you need, it gives you an enormous amount of freedom. You can decide, I don't want to take on any more customers and work this hard. I'm going to take it easy and I'm going to enjoy some time. Or you can decide, this is great. And I get to, like you said with Dave, live like nobody else can. I want to live even more like nobody else can. So I'm going to double down and work harder. I'm going to hire some more people. I'm going to train them to work with me to help build this even more, which will take you to that next level. Right. And then from there, you decide, is that good? Or do you want to go to the next level? There's always a next level. And that's the greatest thing is the freedom involved with it. You are no longer answering to someone else. You choose who you answer to. You choose which clients you want to answer to and which ones you don't want to answer to. You choose how hard you want to work or don't want to work. You choose if you want to work from a beach or do you want to rent a nice office. How do you want to do it? That is the ultimate libertarian part of it, is you get to decide. So with it comes along how much money you make. How much money do you want to make for the government? Because you are a tax agent at the end of the day. So you can decide that, boy, I really want to make some more money, but I don't want to give them any more. So I'm going to wait. I'm not going to build right now. I'm going to wait till things are a little more in line with my way of thinking. Then I'm going to build, because it's going somewhere you want it to go. It's that freedom of choice. You get to decide how much money you make, which is how much money taxes you pay, which goes to programs you prefer or not prefer. That is the ultimate power and control of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. One of the great things about the US, and I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but our tax code is something like, I don't know, 50,000 pages or something, but 95% of it is how to not pay taxes. So there's like 1,200 pages of taxes you have to pay. And then the rest of it is how to get out of paying the taxes. So once you get to a certain level, it's interesting because at about $200,000, $300,000, you're stuck. There's very little options. But once you get to that $500,000, $1 million mark, all of a sudden this whole wide world of not having to pay taxes opens up, which in some ways is very unfair to the people at the $200,000, $300,000 level. But it's great that you have the freedom once you get up here to stop paying a lot of these taxes. There's so many deferment strategies and just write-offs that you don't have to pay taxes on. Is the tax structure a little like flexible like that in Canada, or are you guys a little?
It's similar. Like there's more similarities between our countries than there are differences.
Right.
And our tax code is of course not the same. I'm not an accountant, so don't ask me on that. I hire one for that, and he would be better to answer those questions. But yeah, there are definitely advantages once you break through certain thresholds. And I would imagine it's like that in most countries. I haven't looked much beyond Canada and the US. I've actually looked at relocating to the US. I've looked at it several times over the past, and I've thought about it. Your climate is better than ours. I do enjoy winter, but the older you get, the harder it gets.
Yeah.
When I was trucking, winter was easy because I spent half of it down there. Now that I'm not trucking, it's not quite so easy. So hence let's get a little more location independent so I can spend some more time down there, which is the beauty of the choice and freedom. But yeah, taxes are difficult, and which is a good part of being self-employed, is you get to designate certain expenses as company expenses and write them off and not pay tax on it, or however tax defer, however you want to call it. There's all kinds of different ways of phrasing it and naming it. So I guess that's a long roundabout way to say, yeah, we've got a lot of the same stuff. Overall, as a percentage of tax, you guys pay less than we do. So our incomes look higher on paper, but our tax burden is also higher. So the net is generally somewhere in the same vicinity. Our money is also worth less. So when you add all of that in, we're roughly the same. In some cases better, in some cases not. So it just depends where you are. I live in Alberta, which is the lowest taxed province in the country. And there's a reason I'm here. It's because it's the lowest tax province in the country. It's also one of the most beautiful. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's but you guys, you have free healthcare for all that tax money you're spending.
Right. Because, everything is free. But meanwhile, alcohol costs just about 3 times as much here as it does down there. Tobacco costs 4 times as much as it does up here than it does down there. And that's all, the free taxes for our free healthcare. Nothing is free. There's a cost and expense to everything. It's a matter of where is it coming from.
Right. Yeah, I think everybody in my audience understands that, but it's always funny because we're trying to, there's a lot of push in the US to get the Canadian style healthcare. And then I talk to a lot of Canadians, and some love it and some go, it just took me 6 months to get an appointment with a cardiologist. This isn't the best. Me
right now, I've got a year waiting list for the surgeon to evaluate what's going on with me. Like if you think about that, is our Now, I'm not going to have to pay for that appointment, not one penny. But is that free? Because that's a year that I'm transitioning to a new, like, rather than going, oh, woe is me, why is this happening to me? I looked at this as an opportunity of, this is happening for me. This is giving me the opportunity to say, I have no choice. It's a hard out. It's time to do something new and move forward. It's forcing me to do that. So this is happening for me, not to me. But if I didn't do that and wasn't embracing this and planning to completely replace that income anyhow, that's a year of no income. So is it free?
Well, and you're sitting there. I'm assuming they would allow you to be on disability or something if they're not even letting you see a doctor.
Yeah, I have. Well, once again, those aren't free either. I paid for those, the disability
Right.
benefits, which, because I can't do my job, because this is what I'm qualified at, this is what I'm skilled at, this is what I'm in, that because I can't do my job, because nobody will accept me sitting for 30 days, I am on disability. Now, that doesn't cover all of my expenses. So I am living probably 40% off of savings,
Yeah.
hence the desire to get going, kick in the ass to take a step forward and learn something new. And my guess is within the next month, I'll be making enough money that I'll be done with that and I'll be off on my own anyhow, because it's starting to snowball and build now as it is. And hopefully this will get me a little more exposure, maybe a client or two, and make that happen even faster.
Yeah, hopefully. So let's talk about the SEO part of it, because I know, I remember when I was coming up, SEO copywriting was a big thing. And it was always keyword stuffing and it sounded awkward. And it never appealed to me as a writer. I went to school, I got a degree in writing. And so the awkward, clunky sentences of the 2007 SEO world just turned me off so much to it. But is it a little different than that now? Or do we still have to jam random keywords and headings and titles and write the most awkward sentences of the world? Or what is the SEO game kind of like today?
Well, of course you have to have keywords, because so here's the simple version of, you and I interact with the website visually. We see it with our eyes and we read. Naturally, the search engines, Google, Bing, Yahoo, all those, they can't go hire somebody to read every page. Right. So they have bots that they call crawlers that come through and they read the code in behind. So you have to have your keyword phrases so that they know how to catalog and categorize this and put it in there. And you need to use it frequently enough so that the computer that's reading it understands what it's reading. So when you're SEO writing, you're writing for two things. You're writing for you and I who interact with this visually and read it as humans. And you're also writing it so that the bots, when they read it, understand, okay, this is where this gets filed. Essentially, think of the internet as the world's biggest library. And everything needs to be filed and categorized, just like the Dewey Decimal symbol, right? Everything has its category. If it's not done correctly, the bots essentially look at the page and go, I don't know, it's a general, throw it in the general pile. Then when I'm looking for Henry Bingaman. Well, there's nothing in here in Henry Bingaman. Well, we'll go look in the general pile. Well, these 5 things in the general pile say Henry, so here you go. When you have something optimized, I'm looking for information on Henry Bingaman. This is Henry Bingaman's page. This is who he is. This is what he's about. These are the problems that he solves. When the bots find that, it's categorized. So now when they go, who is Henry Bingaman? This one is very detailed. This is the first one you get. That's what I'm trying to do. My whole goal is so that your services, your business, your website, whatever it is categorized so well that when somebody types in, I'm looking for XYZ, the bots go, this one is very good on XYZ. It's very clear. We understand what it is. It's the first one you get served. What is it, like 74%? The first listing, the first non-advertisement listing gets 74% of the traffic. Yeah. So it's your decision. Do you want to fight for 26%? Or would you rather live at the summit with 74%?
So, all right, I'm assuming most people listening to this are going to have a website. I know you can build from scratch if people need it from the beginning. But when you come in with, you get a new client, let's say they're a local Philadelphia business, because that's the closest big city to me. I don't know. And they're selling cleaning services, whatever. What's the first thing you do when you look at their website? What are you looking for initially to see where you can improve it?
Near me is the best. So in the last couple of years, near me searches have skyrocketed. It's like 900% growth. Crazy. So in all reality, a small business should be looking at SEO, because this is going to be the differentiator of you. Are you in that 74% or the 26%?
Right.
Where do you want to be, right? The very first thing that I look at is NAP, name, address, phone number. Are they consistent across every single listing? Because if they're not, that confuses the crawlers. It's like, well, we've got one set of information here, another one says this, and another one says that. They don't know which one is right. So they don't know where to categorize it. So you need all that consistent. So number one for any small business is make sure your Google business profile, your Yelp, Yellow Pages, wherever your business is listed on whatever local listing, that the name, address, and phone number is exactly the same on all of them. That is number one, because that will increase your search results there. And then from there, it's a matter of, are your categories correct? So, if you're in cleaning services, are you specific? What do you clean? Are you an after hours office cleaner, or do you go clean houses? Because those are two different things. Right. Now, you can have two different divisions that do that, and that's cool. Never list those things on your website on the same page, because as the bots come through that page, if you have 12 services listed on there, you go into the general pile.
Right.
Because it's 12 services. They're all different. Have 12 different pages. House cleaning, office cleaning, janitorial for schools. You pick which ones they are, and one page that is focused on each one. And then that way, when somebody is looking for house cleaning, you're not just in a general pile, you are in house cleaning.
Right.
Somebody else is looking for office, you're also in office, because you're there first before general. And that's where, when the search engines are looking for something, they're always going to what comes first. And the general pile is always last.
And location makes a huge difference too now, is from what you're kind of saying.
Absolutely. Having your address and all of that stuff, doing local SEO is it's the best return on investment you can make for any kind of advertising, for sure. Think of it this way. The internet is basically a jungle. I'm a landscaper. I come in with my machete and I hack all the jungle away and expose your storefront. That, until you have this done, is behind the jungle and nobody sees it. My job is to come in with my machete and just whack that all away and expose you so people can find you.
All right, so let's do a harder case. Let's say I wanted to compete for Libertarian Podcast, which I don't know if you know this, but basically every white male under the age of 50 that's a libertarian has their own podcast. So what kind of techniques, because I'm not just going to, I'm not going to outrank Tom Woods or Dave Smith for Libertarian Podcast. What kind of techniques would I use or would be beneficial to someone like me who's trying to grow a podcast organically on a website?
For that, you would want to use long tail keywords. So Libertarian Podcast is 2 words and it's very specific. So we would want to add to that. Libertarian Podcast specializing in information for entrepreneurs. Libertarian Podcast specializing in learning how to get out of the view of the system of the government. Something like that. So that, because most people, when they come looking for something, generally don't type 1 word or 2 words. Right. It's usually a phrase. So, but most people, when they're looking at something that I want to be found for this, and they focus on that, and they don't realize that there is a broader term that not as many people are going for, that you can rank for. So Libertarian Podcast might have 10,000 views or 10,000 hits a day. But like you said, getting ranked on that is going to be difficult. So you're fighting for that 26%. Whereas Libertarian Podcast, specialize in providing information to entrepreneurs. Libertarian Podcast, specialized information entrepreneurs. That phrase may only be searched 300 times. Well, if you rank number 1 for that and you get 75% of it, that's a whole lot more than fighting for that 26% of that tiny little one, isn't it?
Sure. So, and would I do that on, so I have, I'm just getting free advice right now.
Absolutely.
I have, every page or every episode that I put out on my podcast gets its own web page, right? It gets its own post. So perfect. How much should I be because all I do is copy and paste the description that I use on Apple and iTunes and all that into my website, and kind of lazy with it. what kind of techniques should I be doing there? Like, how do I do keyword research, I guess, for figuring out based on that episode, like how much work am I gonna have to put in if I really want to optimize this to the max for each of
For
those posts, long tail?
for you to do it personally would be exact same thing of like the cleaner with the services. It has 12 different services, but single each one out. So your title is your number one thing. So that's going to be your, what they call, like in the code, is your H1 header, which is literally the code behind the scenes that you don't actually see. And that's what the crawlers look at, is the most important text on the screen is your H1 header. And a lot of people, it's their company slogan, not the problem they solve. Well, the problem is when the crawlers come, it's a slogan. I used to do this with my own website. It used to say, inspiration that moves mountains. The crawlers look at that and go, I have no clue what this is. File it over there.
Right.
My website now, if you go to it, says best SEO agency in Alberta. The bots know exactly what that is. It's got Alberta, which is where I'm located, SEO agency, web design has web design in it as well. I don't have it up to look at it off the top of my head. I play with things to see what make changes. So your H1 title is your most important thing, and you should have that long tail keyword of that episode in that title. The next is your subheading, which is going to be your H2. You want your long tail keyword in there and maybe a slightly different phrase so that it'll catch some other traffic as well. And if you have buttons or links, that's what we call anchor text. Most people's buttons on their web pages, this is a big mistake, some free tips here for you, is click here, read more. Well, if H1 is the most important thing on the page and H2 is the second most important and your A tags are your third most important, what does click here mean? In the general pile.
Right.
None of my buttons say click here. They're all great big long ones. Book an SEO strategy with an Alberta expert. Well, it's got keywords right in the anchor text. So when the bots come through and crawl my page, which they should for you from now on, it's no longer, this episode is on this, read more. The entire this episode is about XYZ should be anchor text. And that way it knows that it goes into that. And the more cues you give the bots as they're crawling that page as to what it's about, the better it's going to be filed and the more relevant the information is going to be when the search engines come to retrieve it. Because at the end of the day, Google doesn't care about you and they don't care about me. They care about the person searching for the information, because if people keep using their service, that's a chance for Google to put ads in front of them and to sell services, right? So they don't care whether they give my information, your information, Tom's information, or Jerry's information. They want to give them the most relevant information so that they keep coming back to Google, because that allows Google to put ads in front. Yeah. So we have to work inside of those confines. We are trying to provide the best information possible for the searcher. And that makes Google give them our information, which then allows us to put ads in front of them.
Yeah, that's great. So I should really start SEOing my, no, that's good stuff. That's, I knew that the keywords in the H1 text, the header text, but I never really thought much about it past that. And I haven't been focusing on SEO, but it seems like a good way to organically grow, because, most of the stuff you do, so many people have to pay for traffic. Facebook makes you pay if you're a business, like you can't get on there. Instagram, Twitter. Now I tried Twitter ads. They're terrible. Everybody else makes you pay. Google's still one of the only ways you can get free organic traffic.
Yes. Yes. As an example, the mentor that I've hired, what he ranks for, the keywords, if he was to pay for that ranking every month, would be $100,000 a month. He pays zero. It's all his own SEO. Now he's been doing it for years, so it's well built. Yeah. And it's very good. So, it takes a while to get to that point to be ranked as, SEO expert in biggest cities in the country. And he's ranked for that, but it's taken him time to get there. But imagine that, $10,000 a month worth of advertising that costs him zero. Now, as an agent, hire an agent who can do the same thing for you for $1,000 a month. And after a year or two, you're at that point where you're getting $10,000 a month worth of traffic for somebody you're paying $1,000 a month. Yeah. That's a return on investment right there.
Absolutely. One of the other things it just popped in my head. I remember back in the day, there was all these like link farms because backlinks were such an important thing. Is that kind of dead? Is there a different linking system that's more important than it used to be? Or
Ooh, this is a fun slope. Yeah, backlinks are very important. They're the boring, uh, who cares side of SEO. But the thing is, be careful with who you hire as an SEO agent, because a lot of places will just go buy backlinks and link them to you. The thing is, now they're starting to rate backlinks, and there are actually backlinks that are labeled as toxic. So if you've got somebody doing backlinking for you with one of these link farms, and they're linking pages to your site, which pages linked to your site basically are fingers pointing saying this person's an authority. And the more fingers pointing towards saying this person's an authority, then as a social score, your rating gets raised and makes you a more of an authority. So you can go buy a whole bunch and point them to you, but if they happen to be toxic ones, they'll actually de-rank you. And it's easy to go buy. I can go, like, my own personal site right now. I just rebranded, relaunched. It's a new site. I have like 50 backlinks. I can go out today right now and buy 10,000. And I'll get a bit of a bump. But as soon as the bots start to realize these are all bad ones, I'll take as big of a hit going back down. So it's not worth it. But a lot of these places won't tell you that. You'll hire them. They'll get you this bump. They show you the bump. Oh, well, this is good. And then 6 months later, you can't figure out why your traffic has died off and you don't know what's going on. And they're like, well, we're trying and we're working. But what they've done in the original thing was they gave you this pill that felt fantastic. The problem is the pill was poison. It just took a while before it got to you.
yeah, like every drug, every drug addict finds out it's great at first, and then the consequences don't. It doesn't pan out at the end of the day.
Exactly. That first rush was fantastic, but boy, the crash is hard.
So your website is summitwebcreations.com for anybody that's interested in checking out more about your SEO services and web design and all that. And you have a podcast called the Hammercast as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just a little side project I started a few months ago. I'm in a few different network communities, which is actually how we met. And the one that I'm in has a lot of young guys, and a lot of young guys nowadays growing up in single family homes or single mothers, and they don't have a dad that gives them advice. And so a lot of these guys have gravitated towards me, which is kind of strange because I don't have kids. And which the flip side is I've got nobody to pass on the knowledge of all the mistakes I've made in life, because made a lot of them. But I've got nobody to pass this on to. So whenever they come to me, I'm giving them advice. I'm kind of like the cool uncle because in my past, I've drag raced motorcycles, I have classic cars, have trucks, I have motorcycles. I'm the cool uncle. So they come to me for the advice. And that's where the show was inspired from. So it's largely just giving advice to young guys on how to level up, get yourself situated in life when you don't understand things. Like my topic last week was on networking. Today's episode is, it's every Wednesday at 8 Eastern on YouTube. Today's episode is Grab Life by and it's all about seizing an opportunity. Occasionally opportunities are going to come along in life and you're going to look at them and go, boy, that'd be pretty cool. Don't do that. That's exactly what I did for Henry today. Is he was looking for a guest, and it's like me. I saw the opportunity and I took it. My thing is new. I'm not very good at this. I'm trying to learn it. So an opportunity to interact with somebody and learn, that's what I did. I seized this opportunity. I grabbed hold of it. And that's what you need to do. And that's what tonight's subject is on.
That's very cool. So where can people, that's on YouTube, you said?
Yeah, on YouTube.
Search the Hammercast on YouTube.
Yeah, it's called the Hammercast. Pre-SEO mistakes, I called the channel Embracing Masculinity, or Embrace Masculinity, because, hey, that's a well-searched term. And every time I was writing a script for a trailer, it came up. So I'm like, that's a great term. It's well-searched. The problem is I'm like you with, libertarian podcast. It is so overshadowed. I can't rank for this keyword. So I actually have to rename it. I'm small enough that nobody knows who I am yet. So I can do that. And I will be doing that shortly. But the actual podcast is called the Hammercast. And so I should be able to be found, I hope, that way, or Embrace Masculinity. I'm not easy to find. I'm a small channel. I've got less than 100 subscribers, but we have fun. And I'm not monetized, so I can talk about whatever I want. Doesn't matter. They can't demonetize me.
they can stomp on you. Trust me.
They can.
I was getting 350 something like that views on YouTube. And then I had Clint Russell on, and we talked about the war in Ukraine and why it's probably not the best idea to be doing it the way we're doing it. And all of a sudden I went down to 50 views an episode. I'm coming back up. We got some, it's not permanent, but yeah, no, I think that's a great thing because there's so many guys out there, especially young guys. This world is so messed up for them right now. We've spent the last 40 years just making it impossible for especially young men, but also young women in a lot of ways to figure out how to navigate this messed up society that we've built. So having somebody they can look up to, especially people that didn't have dads growing up, I think that's a great service you're providing. So hopefully we can help that grow a little bit. And I will include links to that in the description here.
Awesome. That'd be great.
Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Not really off the top of my head that I can think of. This has been great. Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation. And I really enjoyed it. And this was our first, we've interacted a little bit in our group calls in the networking group, but this has been great to kind of get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's been great. I appreciate it very much. And like I say, saw the opportunity and I just grabbed hold. Like, there's a chance to learn something, maybe impart a little knowledge and share who I am.
That's the way to go. All right. Thanks, Bentley.
Yep. Thanks, Henry. Have a great day.
All right, that's the episode for this week. And remember, go grab my Levels of Liberty tactical checklist. Again, I put this together as a simple guide to help you kind of assess how free you are in your own life and then how to climb up the different levels of liberty. So you can grab that at henrybing.co/liberty. That's henrybing.co/liberty. All right, see you back here next week.